Los Angeles. A couple weeks ago, on the first day of Women's History Month, she was named the city's first female fire chief. Say that 5 times fast. And that's not the only barrier she broke through, y'all. She's also the department's first openly gay leader as well. So let's welcome and congratulate soon-to-be Los Angeles Fire Chief Kristen Crowley.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Am I against a lesbian being chief? Of course not. Do I think a lesbian can do the job? Of course I do. And maybe she's the best person for the job. Or maybe they really wanted a lesbian in that job, and she's just the best lesbian for the job. And with essential services, that's not good enough.
A few moments later.
We're following some breaking news in Los Angeles. Mayor Karen Bass has fired the city's fire chief in the wake of the catastrophic wildfires that scorched the area last month. At a press conference this afternoon, Mayor Bass criticized Chief Kristen Crowley for failing to have more firefighters on duty the morning those fires broke out.
So today we have a DEI special for you. We have the first black female mayor of Los Angeles firing the first female openly gay fire chief in Los Angeles. And it's kind of crazy. Now, check out how this story is being covered in the media. Now, this is Ground News, a platform that makes it easy to compare news sources, read between the lines of the media bias, and break free from the algorithms. So as you can see here, it says Karen Bass fires LA fire chief over wildfire response disputes. And you have 233 news organizations covering this story. And with this bias distribution over here, you can really see how the story is being covered on the left and on the right. As you can see on the left, you have LA fire chief gets booed for mishandling wildfires. Now, on the right, they focus on something a little different. Here's the American Wire News. Mayor Karen Bass feels the burn after axing lesbian fire chief who criticized her leadership. Now, one thing I do love is how the left likes to focus on the hiring of DEI, while the right seems to focus on the firing of someone based on DEI. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Ground News is sponsoring this video, and I really believe in the product because I use it all the time for my videos. Now, if you want a great deal, go to ground.news/Nate to get 40% off Ground News' Vantage plan. So what do you get? Well, you get the coverage details and all of these sources aggregated in one place. You get the bias distribution, how the left wing or the right wing is spinning a narrative to the story. Now, you also get the blind spot report, which I think is the most valuable piece to this because you get to see what stories are not being covered by the left wing and what stories are not being covered by the right wing. Now, I highly recommend Ground News. I use it myself. Remember, go to ground.news/Nate. Use my link and you'll save 40% on Ground News. Check it out and let me know what you think. All right, let me introduce you to the players. This is Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. She has the distinction of being the first black female mayor of Los Angeles.
Mark, Giovanna, this is a historic moment in LA politics for several reasons. Congresswoman Bass becomes the first woman and just the second black Angelino elected to lead the city in its 241-year history. The Associated Press is projecting Bass as the winner. Now, here are the latest numbers. Take a look. With over 70% of the vote counted, Bass has a strong 6-point lead over her opponent, billionaire developer Rick Caruso. Now, Bass beat Caruso despite him spending more than $100 million of his own fortune, shattering local spending records and pumping eye-popping amounts of money into TV advertising. In fact, Caruso outspent Bass more than 11-1, but was ultimately unable to prevail as a former Republican in this Democratic stronghold. Bass had political star power behind her campaign. The 69-year-old was endorsed by President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and former President Barack Obama. Bass, who is from Baldwin Hills, has spent decades in public service as an activist, former Assembly Speaker, and as a 6-term member of Congress. Her campaign telling us tonight she was in our local congressional office when she heard the news.
Now, along with having the first female mayor, they also elected the first female fire chief who happened to be openly gay. Another first.
Welcome back to CBS Saturday Morning. The city of Los Angeles swore in a new fire chief yesterday, and for the first time in history of the department, she is a woman. Kristen Crowley will lead the nation's third largest firefighting force in our second biggest city as a push for diversity continues in a male-dominated field.
Now, since we're talking about diversity in the workplace, we have to talk about DEI. Now, for those of you who don't know, that stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, the criticism of DEI is simple. If you're hiring people based on their sex or their race, for instance, and you're not hiring them based on their qualifications, then that could lead to disasters. Now, DEI usually comes in two flavors. It's DEI unqualified and DEI qualified. An example of someone who's DEI qualified is Justice Jackson on the Supreme Court. She was nominated by President Biden, who said this.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping, traveling with him. I guess we traveled 17,000 miles when I was vice president. I don't know that for a fact. And
okay, my bad. That was the wrong clip. Here's the right clip.
I will nominate will be someone with extraordinary qualifications, character, experience, and integrity. And that person will be the first black woman ever nominated to the United States Supreme Court. It's long overdue in my view. I made that commitment during the campaign for president, and I will keep that commitment.
Now, I know I pick on the liberals a lot, but it was the same thing with Clarence Thomas. Everyone knew he was being picked because he was black and he was replacing the first black justice. But listen to how George Bush explained why he picked Thomas. He's not telling people, I'm looking for the second black man. He's saying, I'm looking for the best man for the job. And this guy is the best person for the job, black, white, or whatever.
But I kept my word to the American people and to the Senate by picking the best man for the job on the merits. And the fact he's minority, so much the better. But that is not the factor, and I would strongly resent any charge that might be forthcoming on quotas when it relates to appointing the best man to the court. That's the kind of thing I stand for, not opposed to.
Just so I could ask the question, was race a factor whatsoever, though?
Well, I tried to answer it just then as best I could. Nice try for the second go-around. Susan.
If I could follow up, I mean, there are many people who felt that in fact that was a plus, not that it was a factor or a quota, but that in fact, since the court represents all the people, there ought to be a minority member. Did you at all feel that way? That this
But I don't feel there's a quota. I don't feel that I had to nominate a black American at this time for the court. I express my respect for the ground that Mr. Justice Marshall plowed. But I don't feel there should be a black seat on the court or an ethnic seat on the court, if that's what your question is. I would reiterate, I think he's the best man. And if credit accrues to him for coming up through a tough life as a minority in this country, so much the better.
So as you can see, one president says, I'm picking the best man, and he just happens to be black, while the other president's saying, I'm picking someone because they are black. Two different ways of thinking about diversity. So now, let's get back to LA. We got the first black woman mayor, and we have the first woman lesbian fire chief. Then, all hell breaks loose. The LA fires happen.
Devastation comes to California.
All right, dude. Yeah, let's get out of here.
Residents flee for their lives.
There's nothing we can do now, bro.
We had everything, like the sentimental things. Like my mom passed away. I had only a few things of hers left.
All the stuff that's here is replaceable. People are not. So having the family is the most important thing.
Homes are destroyed on an unprecedented scale.
People would normally be driving up and down here with surfboards on top of their cars, ready to enjoy a day at the beach. But right now, it just looks like some sort of apocalypse.
Firefighters struggle to hold back the flames.
All 29 fire departments in our county are not prepared for this type of widespread disaster.
But how did it happen? And why did the fires spread so quickly?
So then the blame game started. Who was to blame? See, right before the LA fires, the mayor, Karen Bass, went to Ghana for like a little vacation or something. Check it out.
Mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, is under intense scrutiny after she was abroad visiting Ghana when the wildfires broke out in the city. She was seen returning to the country at the city's airport, where she refused to comment on the situation.
fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that?
Me, okay?
Have you no response to that? Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today?
Can you back up, boss? I appreciate it.
Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position?
Now, compounding all of this, the mayor and city council cut millions of dollars from the fire department's budget, and that money was directly tied to things like fire prevention for wildfires. Here is the fire chief, Chief Crowley, explaining it.
About $17 million in budget cuts for this year alone. Has that impeded your firefight?
It has. And the reality with any type of budget cut, it absolutely hampered our ability to provide service on a day-to-day basis, let alone on something historical like the multiple fires that have negatively impacted our communities. It absolutely hampered us.
You've been asking for years for more money. And what has the city or the mayor said in response?
So first and foremost, as I take a big step back, I've got the honor and privilege to represent the amazing men and women of our organization. My job is to make sure that our firefighters have what they need, tools, equipment, training, so that we can serve the community, period. So since day one, we've been fighting for, I stepped up, my team stepped up, and we've identified gaps in our service. So for 3 years now, I've been ringing the alarm and saying the fire department does not have enough resources, and it's validated across the board. Our firefighters are doing everything they can do with what they've got. It's not enough. We've had a 55% increase in overall call volume since 2010, and we're doing it with 68 less people. We can't do it anymore, and it's time for me to step up. I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant like every other firefighter in the LAFD. It's my job to make sure that we step up and we do what we need to do and get them what they need. We need to be funded.
It must be very difficult to be in your position and sound the alarm. It's not an easy thing to do.
It's not easy, but it's the right thing to do. And that is why, again, I'm in the seat at this very moment. And look back 3 years. This is not a new issue that I have raised. We have document after document after document that justifies that the fire department is under-resourced, underfunded, and understaffed. So we're at this pivot point. So that is the position that I am going to take and I continue to take for 3 years. We are at that breaking point, and the firefighters, as you know, are absolutely amazing, but it's not sustainable. It is time to make sure that our firefighters get what they need in regard to the equipment, the tools, and the training so they can go do their jobs.
Well, speaking of the tools and the equipment, one thing that's crazy when I heard is you have tons of equipment not even being used just because you can't pay mechanics to fix it.
We actually have approximately it's actually $50 million worth of fire department apparatus that we don't have people to work on.
So let's think about this. They cut the fire department budget and they didn't have enough money for fire prevention services, to fix fire trucks, a whole bunch of stuff. But they did add some things to the budget that they felt were more important, like DEI.
The Los Angeles Fire Department is launching its first ever Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau. It is dedicated to ensuring a fair and equal workplace environment.
So by creating this new bureau, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau, now we actually have the staff to do the work when it comes to doing a deep dive in regard to how we do business.
That, of course, included the torture of DEI classes.
We are hosting our new employee orientation, and our focus is to teach our new employees for them to understand cultural competency, identify implicit and unconscious bias, and be aware of the importance of us having a diverse and inclusive workforce.
I welcome all of you in this room to join, whether you're LGBTQ plus or not, or you're just an ally, you have family members, anybody that's willing to engage.
The Los Angeles County Fire Department would be recognized nationally and possibly even globally as an agency that was very serious about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Now think about how much it costs to do all of this. You have to hire the trainers. All these people who are in there are actually getting paid, right? They're not sitting in there for free. So that's a cost. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. There was even an ad campaign.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
So the bottom line was less money for fire prevention services to stop wildfires and more money for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we have a very interesting little situation developing here. We have the first black female mayor of Los Angeles taking all the heat because, you know, she cut the budget for the fire department. And then we have the first lesbian woman fire chief who essentially is saying we don't have enough money to do the job we need to do. But as you know, Blink rolls downhill, so the fire chief had to go.
Now, the mayor made the announcement today, but she also said she knew she was going to fire Kristen Crowley almost immediately after the fires, essentially saying that she failed to prepare Los Angeles, putting our lives at risk.
We all know that 1,000 firefighters that could have been on duty on the morning the fires broke were instead sent home on Chief Crowley's watch.
During the press conference today, the mayor criticizing Kristen Crowley for sending home some 1,000 firefighters right before the Palisades fire broke out on January 7. The reason why is still under investigation. Additionally, the mayor claims Crowley refused an after-action report on the fires, despite other members of the LAFD claiming the investigation is happening now and that she is not refusing to cooperate.
All right, so the first black female mayor is firing the first white female lesbian fire chief because of political reasons, obviously, right? She needs a fall guy, and the fire chief is the obvious fall guy. The issue is that the fire chief is actually qualified for the job. And the firefighters, the frontline firefighters, said, no, it's not the fire chief's fault that you cut the budget. It's the mayor's fault. And stood behind the fire chief and said she shouldn't be removed.
President of the United Firefighters of Los Angeles, Freddie Escobar, says UFLAC has Crowley's back.
Our firefighters stand united in saying that this was a grave mistake by the mayor to treat our fire chief like this, to throw her under the bus and make her a scapegoat.
Now, in Los Angeles, if the mayor relieves the fire chief of her duties, the city council can reinstate the fire chief if the fire chief chooses to appeal that firing. So the city council is meeting Tuesday of this week to see if the fire chief is going to get her job back.
And now Crowley says she wants her job back, sending a letter to council members she's appealing the mayor's decision to fire her. Now in 4 days, the blame game to be played out publicly. Escobar promises his fellow firefighters will be there to push for the return of their former leader.
All right, so will the ultra woke LA City Council uphold the firing of the first female lesbian fire chief? Well, here's what happened.
As former LA Fire Chief Kristen Crowley is not getting her head job back after city leaders denied her appeal for reinstatement.
In a contentious and emotional hearing, the Los Angeles City Council voted 13-2 upholding Mayor Karen Bass's firing of the former chief.
So now that's the end of the video. What do you think? Do you believe the fire chief should get her job back? Do you think the mayor is just essentially throwing her under the bus to save her own political skin? I don't think the mayor is going to make it. I think she's one termer and out. You know, she headed out of town when the fires are here, and now she's trying to throw the first lesbian fire chief under the bus. Things are not going good. So we will see eventually what happens. But that being said, don't forget to like, subscribe to the great YouTube stuff. Let me know how you feel in the comment section. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I'm out. Peace.